Well, welcome back to the Ropes Family Podcast. Today we're coming at you with a different topic. So I came up with these topics about a couple weeks ago, just kind of randomly writing titles, so we could have a starting point for these. And so we have them written out until the next 10 podcasts, maybe. We have titles, but nothing to start. And so when we started to put this podcast together, the episode was titled "Why Me," and I didn't know why it was titled "Why Me." To be honest with you, I just thought that was a cool title, and I was probably in my feels. Why me? Why me? But as I started thinking about it more, I think that I wanted to focus on this passage in Ephesians. And as I went in this verse in Ephesians, I thought of this other passage in Exodus, and so we'll get into all that. But the passage or the verse in Ephesians, we've talked about it quite a bit on this podcast. It's Ephesians 2:10. In the NIV, it says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." That's the NIV, and then the ESV says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them." And so, Courtney, could you define handiwork/workmanship?
Handiwork is something that one has made or done. Workmanship is the degree of skill with which a product is made or a job is done.
Yeah, so and those are Webster's?
Yes.
Good job. We're going to get sued by Webster's by the amount of...
We give them credit.
Oh, yeah, Webster's. Okay,
We're fine.
Hey, Webster's, do you want to sponsor this podcast? Because that's
That'd
what
be
we need,
fantastic.
sponsors. We don't need sponsors.
By a dictionary.
Yeah, we're sponsored by a dictionary because we're very eloquent. And we're going to get
Yes.
into eloquency here in a second. But as far as for handiwork and workmanship, I really like both of those words. I did a word study on these in one of my college classes a semester or two ago, and it means exactly what you defined it as in Webster's. You know, something that one is made or done. You know, workmanship, the degree of skill, and so put those two together, and you're carefully crafted. You're made for a reason. You're made to do a specific thing. We are God's handiwork. We are God's workmanship. Proud creation. Proud. When you make something, you're proud of it, right? You're excited to have it. Mm-hmm. You cherish it. It's not something like it's not handiwork if you just make something and throw it away.
Right.
It's you enjoy it. It's something that you care about. And so that kind of brought me into this story in Exodus. It's the story of Moses and the burning bush. If you haven't read it, it's in Exodus 3 and 4. It's a great. I was reading it before we started recording again, just to kind of refresh my whole memory on it. It's a great story. I mean, just put yourself in Moses' shoes. You're kind of just walking around and you see a burning bush. But before we get too far into that, it's showing that we're created for a purpose, and that God's got a plan for our lives. Moses had a pretty wild upbringing, right? He gets tossed out like the baby in the bathwater, right? Literally gets tossed out in the bathwater, and then he just gets found. Like God was watching over Moses. God obviously had a plan for Moses from the beginning to bring him to where he is to this point. And so God calls Moses through a burning bush, right? And all of these things, and God gives Moses a specific plan. He says, "Go and tell Pharaoh to let my people go and worship me for 3 days." And Moses this is where he asks, why me? Or who am I, Lord? Why send me? And so I think that's where we get the why me from. Why me? Why not somebody else? Mm-hmm. And it goes into, God created Moses for this reason. God called Moses Moses is unsure of himself, and Moses he comes up with excuse after excuse. I'm not very well spoken. I'm uneloquent. Like I speak slow. I'm why are you choosing me? He keeps asking God for these things, and God says, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of you. I've got this under control. I have a plan. I want to use you. You are the tool I've carefully crafted. You are the workmanship that I've created. Why you is because I said so." and God didn't leave Moses to figure it out on his head. He didn't just say, "Go and tell Pharaoh." God says, "I'll be with you." And I'm in control of the situation. I'll harden Pharaoh's heart. I'll do all of these things to make sure I've got this all in control. And God didn't leave Moses to figure out what he was supposed to do. God laid all the groundwork, and he stayed with Moses, like I said. And in Exodus 4, chapter 4, verse 11 says, "The Lord said to him, 'Who gave human beings their mouths? Who made them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say.'" Moses was, "Why me? I'm uneloquent. Why me? I'm all this. I'm this. I'm this. I'm this. I'm not a good leader." And God said, "Well, who made you? Me. Who crafted you? Me." Right? Like we just kind of summed up, and that brings me into we've all kind of had a similar experience to Moses. Well, I don't think we've all run up on burning bushes, but
I have not. No.
or okay. So put it in perspective.
Okay.
Sorry. We've
been called to do something.
We're all called to do something, right? And it kind of depends on who you are to what you're called to. We all have a very similar call, is to love God and love people, but we all are called to kind of do things that differently. We all are gifted to do that differently. But we are all called to do something, even if we don't feel like we're good at it, or if we feel like we're not good enough, we can't talk well enough. We're literally on a podcast, and I don't talk very well. I mean, if you've had conversations with me, I'm literally talking to people on a podcast right now, but this is something that I feel called to do, right? And so God's going to equip me, and he's going to make it as good as he wants to make it. And same thing, whatever our insecurity is, God's going to work through that. Mm-hmm. He's not insecure about our insecurities. He's confident in himself, and he knows his abilities, and he knows that he crafted us for a reason, and to do these things. And so, God promised to help Moses, and he will help us do the tasks we're assigned to do too. It's not like he's going to say, and we've said this on this podcast before, go and love these people, but I'm not going to tell you or show you how or be with you in that moment. That's why we have the Spirit now. God is going to do these things for us. Or if we're faithful, God will work within us to do what he wants us to do. And the funny part of this story is at the end of chapter 4, after God explains all of the things he proves that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. He makes Moses' staff a snake. And then he puts it back into a staff, and then he makes Moses' hand a leper, what does he say? Moses' hand becomes leprous. And so he makes his hand leprous, and then he heals it. God proves hey, I'm not joking around. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna do this, and these are your signs to show. And Moses is still it's in verse 13 of chapter 4. It says, "But Moses says, 'Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send somebody else.'"
Please don't make me go.
Please don't make me go, right? God's smarter than that. But I just think it's so funny. God can prove himself over and over again to us, and then we're still I don't know if I'm actually supposed to be doing this. Mm-hmm. but it's also God clearly is calling us to do something, and we're kind of running from it. And so I wanted to ask the question. I don't know, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, Courtney, but I can answer this too. What are things that we're called to do that we could be running from?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being called to help with this ministry in Lubbock that's for unwed mothers, and it's for mothers who have chosen life. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel very called to it, but I reached out one time, then I got all freaked out, and I was like, I can't do this. I don't even know why I think I can. I was married and I had my kids. I have nothing in common with these women.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I get on social media or whatever, it's like the first thing I see.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm being called to it, but I'm just terrified.
Yeah. Why would God use you in that situation? Like
I have nothing in common with these people, but I just feel so led to help them and go do whatever they need done.
Yeah, and so what is the first step on doing that? And it's important to kind of flesh out that call. You know, maybe you're not actually called to that, but maybe you're supposed to kind of go down that road and figure out maybe a more niche way or a more niche place to serve. Mm-hmm. But this is how you get there. You know? Because God didn't tell Moses everything that he was going to do. Right from the beginning, right? He kind of just gives him tasks here and here and here and kind of guides him through, you know, but the thing is if Moses was faithful and he finally went to do what God told him to do. And did God fail Moses? Did God leave Moses?
No.
You know, and so is God going to leave us in the things that he calls us to do?
No.
Right. Did Moses fail God?
Over and over.
Yes, but he did. And do we feel God all the time?
Constantly.
You know, and there's grace, and that's the whole point. I think that God uses us because we're not perfect, but he wants to show that he is perfect. But does God still work even though we're not perfect? He still uses us and still uses the things he crafts, his workmanship. He still uses us, right?
Well, he even used David.
Yeah.
It was a disaster. Let's be honest here. David he should not have been anything. We don't know everything David did. And yet God, he was a man after God's own heart. God used him despite all of his shortcomings. Yeah. And that gives me so much more confidence every day that God can still use me even though I lose my patience or I'm just tired and sick of things and I don't want to, do certain things. And God's like, nah, we're still going to do this. Yeah. I got you. Yeah. So I think it's a big confidence builder.
Yeah. Rely on me.
Yeah.
Of course you can't do it on your own.
No.
Of course you can't. You're
also a disaster. So
you're not designed to do that, you know, and that's where he's getting at. You're not designed to do things on your own. You're designed to rely on God. We're not we weren't created to be apart from God.
Right.
But sin entered the world and created that separation. That's why we're all so lost and we have no idea what we're doing. It's because we're trying to rely on ourselves instead of God sometimes. And that's why Moses didn't feel like he was good enough, because he knew that there was going to be a big task. He was going to have to face Pharaoh and speak clearly, which that God only gave him 4 words to say, let my people go. Well, there was more words, but
those are the most important ones, right?
Yeah, it was very clear. Like, you can practice that. Yeah. But still, there was other conversations, but that was a big. But God also used Moses within his ability. Like he didn't go make him give like a super long speech to Pharaoh. It was very short. Tell Pharaoh this so they can go and worship, so they can do so they can serve their God. And so God, and same thing with us. He's gonna use us within our abilities, but he's also gonna stretch us a little. Which is, he may stretch our patience, he may stretch our time, he may stretch our abilities, but that's to have us rely on him instead of us rely on ourselves.
Okay, so last night when I was, this one just did me in, and I couldn't figure out where I was going with it. So I started reading a lot, and this verse kept popping up in everything I was reading. It's everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory, whom I formed and made. And it's in Isaiah 43:7. And so I started looking into that more and more. And one author that I read said that we are created in his image, and we're always searching to be more like him. We're always searching to do the things he wants us to do. And non-believers aren't doing that. And so they're always searching for some way to be happy. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I am too. And I always know when it's when I'm not relying on God that I'm like, I'm just not happy. Well, it's because I've gone off on my own over here and doing my own stuff. So if we're walking hand in hand with the one who made us and what he made us for, then we're going to be happy. We're going to have, we're still going to be tired. I'm not saying that we're still going to be tired. We're still going to have, things in our life that aren't perfect, but there's still that joy, that underlying joy that only Jesus can bring to you.
Yeah, and that's something that we kind of touched on in youth service last night. We talked about a little bit of the fruits of the Spirit. We kind of introduced that a little bit, and I asked them the question: what is fruit on a plant? It's the result of something. It's the result of change. It's the result of work being done, and the same thing with joy. Joy is a fruit of the Spirit, and it's the result of having the Spirit inside of us. And so if we're not walking in the Spirit, if we're not walking with Jesus, then our joy isn't going to be the result of the things that we do. If we're looking for in the world for our joy, then the result isn't going to be there. No. If we're looking any other place besides God and Jesus and walking in the Spirit, then the results of those things aren't going to be the fruits of the Spirit. They're going to be hurt. They're going to be left wanting more. Like you said, non-believers are always looking for something to get them to the next step or to get them to happiness. But
fulfillment.
Yeah, to make their plant grow, but their plant isn't rooted in any good soil. It's not able to be cultivated by God.
Right.
It's left out to dry, and it's planted on bad soil, and so to be honest, that's going to be a couple of our next podcasts. We're going to kind of go through the fruits of the Spirit and how those things work, how those things show up in our lives. Not this week or next week, but in a couple of weeks we're going to walk through all the fruits of the Spirit. But that's just a little preview of kind of where we're going, and a little bit of what we talked about in youth last night. But I'll give you the same family challenge that I gave the youth last night. I said to walk in the Spirit, to let the result of the Spirit inside of you be known. Instead of just keeping it for yourself, let the fruits be shared and seen. So walk in the Spirit. And in order to walk in the Spirit, you have to have the Spirit inside of you. So I gave them, I basically shared the gospel with them again. I said, in order to have the Spirit within, to be able to have the fruits of the Spirit, you have to have the Spirit. And how you get the Spirit is you let Jesus in your heart. You place your faith in Jesus. You make him the Lord of your life, and the Spirit comes and dwells within you. And so the Spirit dwelling within you is what's going to what's going to bear the fruit of what God has done, and the fruits of the Spirit. Those things will be evident in your life because you have the Spirit within you.
Hey, it's what we talked about in kids too.
Oh, wow.
Shining your light, being an example for your friends, but the only way you can do that is if Jesus is inside of you. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the same thing, just in a much more simple way.
I think that the light that within us is the Spirit. It is Jesus.
We got glow sticks though, so.
Hey, glow sticks. Yeah, my kids they went to sleep with those last night. They were like, I need a nightlight. It's my nightlight, and whatever. It was fine.
Maybe that'll remind them though. Maybe.
It worked. I think it was good. They took them to school, so we'll see if they get taken away. But you got anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, that's all we got this week. We really enjoy doing these podcasts. We're so grateful that you listen. We will talk at y'all next week. Peace.